Hi, and welcome to a very special episode of the Planetcast. We are your hosts. I'm Train. This is Yuki. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
and
not.
I get introduced by Train, so it's all good.
You paused, man. You paused.
Professionals, that's what we are. Anyway, today we're actually going to talk about a subject that's very near and dear to most of our hearts, though we don't really consider it all that much, and that's game design. What constitutes good game design and what's bad game design, and some examples herein as to what we think are both good and bad. That is him typing.
I'm sorry, that's unavoidable.
Yes. I mean, I guess I should start things off because and the reason I wanted to do this podcast mainly is because last video we did the whole 4-hour slog fest that was our top 10s. I don't know if anyone actually remembers, but I did briefly talk about sandbox games and the mechanics therein.
You did.
And I mentioned that one of my key sticking points to sandbox games is, movement and transportation across the map. Because if that's not inherently fun, then the game is inherently badly designed.
Yes.
I can say this about some games like the first Saints Row, which is terrible, which has a bunch of terrible gameplay design choices in it. I could say it about. I'm not trying to think of a sandbox game. It doesn't have good momentum. Actually, Final Fantasy 15 doesn't have good movement to it. Running about on the chocobos is fun. The regalia isn't fun though, and I think you can agree.
It's great fun when it can fly.
Yeah, but that's the post game, and therein lies a problem.
I suppose.
I mean, I like 15. It was on my top 10 list, but I'm just saying that in that way, it's not good design on the regalia. Because it's just, by and large, you're going to skip it. You'll try it for the novelty for the first bit, and then after a while, you'll just go, oh, I can't be asked. Ignis, you drive. Unless it's at night, then he's a pansy.
Well, yeah, but even then, he's not a pansy for long. And frankly, the regalia is only really relevant to traveling for, not counting side questy stuff, less than 30% of the game.
But but I'm just saying is that from a mechanic standpoint, it's not very well fleshed out. And as I said, this is in a game I like. Now, if we look into a game like Evil Within, which is a game I really don't like, the reason I don't like it is because I think it's just wrong on every mechanical level to it. I don't know if either of you have played Evil Within.
Not yet, no.
No.
So it's designed made by Shinji Mikami, the guy who created Resident Evil, and I'm trying to think. The problem is it's a game that doesn't know what it wants to be. On the one hand, it's trying to be a survival horror, so you have the limited resources that you'd associate with survival horror. You've got the kind of enemy types you'd associate, the level designs. It's all kind of very, you can see the Resident Evil roots into it. But the problem is, from the gameplay perspective, it doesn't support the survival horror aspect because it's just all about throwing you into constant battles, which just eat up resources. Like survival horror games, all the good ones, usually have alternative ways of bypassing enemies, either through, use of melee attacks, which you don't have in Evil Within, but you do have in Resident Evil and Silent Hill and all the good stuff. Or the ability to hit enemies. But you don't have any of that in Evil Within. So from a mechanical standpoint, it doesn't fulfill its role as a survival horror game, but because the resources are so limited, it doesn't even work as an action game because it's just a constant slugfest of having to fight just to keep enough resources to not die. And then sometimes it's quite easy to wind up in scenarios where you just can't continue on the game. Like boss fights especially are just damage sponges.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Would you say a good counterpoint to that, i.e. the system done right, would be The Last of Us?
Yes. Last of Us is... Last of Us has a few action set pieces, but the game is never really trying to be an action game. It is, all in all, a stealth horror game. Well, a stealth game with horror elements to it.
I'd call it more survival horror, but just because you are a lot more reliant on being able to find and craft from the resources you have. You do have guns, but they're not really good or useful.
A last resort, just as, it's clearly, most often than not, if you're hurt, it's really more of a case of restart. But I mean, at least the game is built from that standpoint of its survival, its stealth, that's how you should and need to play the game, and that's fine. Like, a game that does what it's designed to do is acceptable. I think a game like Evil Within, which has two completely different tracks to its gameplay mechanics that are just contradictory to one another, it doesn't do either one well, so you're just left with this mess.
I think, like, what hurts Evil Within in that case is that there are occasions that you will need resources for, i.e. bosses. The Last of Us, like, okay, it does kind of have bosses, but not in the sense that you are ever not going to be able to get through them.
Yeah.
Whereas Evil Within, you can run out of resources around a corner and just like, whoops, there's a guy. I can't fight him at all.
You had it in the final sections of the game. I just had to cheat the system, like literally cheat it, because I was just in situations where I couldn't find any ammunition for any of the weapons. It was terrible. And to continue on with this discussion of bad game design and weaponry, BioShock Infinite.
Oh, okay.
Now,
I could talk about this.
We're not going to talk about the story. What I'm going to talk about is the weapons mechanics of BioShock Infinite. Now,
yeah.
I wasn't opposed to the 2 weapon rules to the system, because on the basis that yes, it would have been great if we could have just had the things from BioShock 1 where you have all of your weapons on a Hot Wheel, how most shooters do it. But whatever, if the rest of the game was fine and the mechanics of the 2 guns was, a thing, I would have cared. What I care about is the fact that there's like every gun has completely different ammo to it, right?
Yeah.
And not all enemies carry the same... Well, they'll carry the same gun, but not the same type of gun, which just uses the exact same ammo, but it's a different colour, and therefore you can't use it. So you'll be stuck in situations where you have a gun, and it's just impossible for you to get ammo for it from that point onwards.
Yeah, which, the game is trying to encourage you to pick up another gun, which I get, but at the same time, because BioShocks 1 and 2 had this system, of the Hot Wheel, of you're carrying every weapon you're finding. I believe is similar to stuff like Doom or whatever. And it got rid of that for no adequately explained reason other than other AAA titles are doing it.
I wouldn't even have been outright opposed to it if it wasn't just... Because I've had it numerous times I was in my playthrough, because I only ever was going to play that game once I finished it, but that's besides the point. But I had it numerous times where I was in the middle of a firefight. It's like, shit, I'm out of ammo. Oh, I'll go get that guy whose gun I just dropped. Oh, wow, he was just using... I don't have the gun he had, but he's only dropped the ammo for the gun he had. Like, It was just frustrating. It wasn't what I would classify as a challenge, where a challenge should be fair. Like tough enemies. I also think the handymen were also complete bullshit, but...
Handymen... frankly, I think they should have just had Big Daddies.
And with the way the gun system worked, didn't do that game's combat any favors.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, Big Daddies were a challenge because you had all of these weapons to draw on. The Handymen were more or less the same thing, but you only had 2 weapons and your plasmids.
Yeah. To be honest, considering how much they nerfed plasmids for Infinite, you basically just had your weapons, I found.
Yeah.
Like, I get how in BioShock 1 they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, because they introduced to you like the single best weapon combination in the game from the start, which is Electrobolt Wrench.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, it's like the best.
It's a good shooter when the melee weapon is your best option.
Electrobolt in of itself is good because it also has applications beyond just, electrocuting. It stuns people. You could use it to electrify a wet floor. Like, the Electrobolt just does so much for one power that it kind of, in my opinion, overshadows all the other plasmids in the game.
Yeah, well, that's kind of highlighting another good bit of game design in that, one thing with many uses.
Yeah.
It's being aware of your environment and how you can use it, and the game allowing you to use it.
But, I mean... Like I said, it was just frustrating in Infinite, the way they handled the weapon system in that. And, like, I'm not opposed to stuff like degrading weaponry, as long as, there's, proper ways to capitalize on it. Or, it's easy enough to regather resources to create something of equivalence to what you have. Like, I'm not saying give the player, like, the best thing from the start, but if there's a slow progression of, I've lost this, but I can go to this, and it's almost as good... or basically the same in terms of damage output and things that players would be comfortable with.
It is a careful art to balancing that, I think.
And I know New Zelda's come out and that's got weapon degradation, but I've not played it yet, and I don't think either of you have.
Neither of us have either.
Exactly, because who's going to buy a Switch for one game? Oh, wait.
I mean, if I could afford it, I would have bought one by now, so...
But, anyway, that's besides the point. But there's plenty of time, but for a good game, to go a different route and talk about a game that I found meh, but have one positive thing to say, the reboot of Devil May Cry. That has a lot of questionable things about it.
Yeah, it does.
And the game and the combat itself is just meh. It's not terrible, but it's not great. It's just kind of, it very much feels like a wannabe Devil May Cry game. What sets DMC apart, though, is its level design. It has extremely good, vibrant color palettes when you get into the demon worlds, and a lot of the ways the levels are twisted and contorted. It's just so unique to a Devil May Cry, to this kind of action game, and they do like make use of this in like the various levels to distinguish all the different areas of the game you visit quite extremely well. Everything has like, well, consider this, like all the factory stuff has the very like kind of undercurrent yellow color scheme that gets progressively more yellow the further in you get.
Yes, yeah.
And then the next prison has a blue color scheme where everything gets more progressively blue the further in you get.
Like I won't disagree with you on the level design point itself. I don't think it's as good as you think it is, but I do still appreciate it. I get the whole difference between regular world and limbo, and how the progression of that works. I will disagree with you on the combat point, though, because even as someone who loves DMC3 far too much, the combat in Dunk, as we should call it, it feels a lot more fluid. Switching weapons isn't nearly the trial it was. It rewards you for high combos and actually kind of teaches you far better than any other DMC game how to do it, whilst not hand-holding you. It's that weird case where it's a very fun game to play, but the level design itself, like while it looked nice and it looked pretty, it didn't feel like it really went anywhere, at least for me.
But I mean, we'll just have to agree to disagree, because obviously a lot of this comes down to personal preference. I kind of didn't like you say it felt fluid, and in a way it did. I also didn't like a lot of the timing on the things. It just threw me off a lot because I was so used to the very specific nuances of the Japanese developed Devil May Cry's and Bayonetta, those kind of character action games. And DMC feels so much slower to me. But I know it's only fractions of frames, but it's that kind of, it takes this long to do a sword swing. I really don't like it. Like it's just wrong to me. I kind of wonder if this is how people who play Dark Souls and Bloodborne and then play Bloodborne feel, or vice versa.
I couldn't answer that. I've only played Dark Souls and I'm pretty good at it, but
the difference is that Dark Souls is another good game with good design because it's a challenging game. No one's questioning that, but it's for most parts fair because everything is designed to be dodged, more or less, or avoided.
I'll argue that Dark Souls is a really good game packaged in a really shit game because it provides a really great system to do the main thing in it. But, and this is a problem that occurs across a lot of genres, it has a really hard time of making you want to do it.
Demon can go fuck itself.
Well, no, not even that. It's just like, I don't know anything about, excuse me, I don't know anything about where I am, who these people are, why I'm doing this. All I know is that what I kind of am doing is quite fun. And I want to continue doing that, but I don't know why.
Well, that's largely because of the design choice, where they wanted to make a game where the story was a background element and something to be discovered and kind of pieced together by the player. Like, there's lots of little, like especially in Bloodborne, which obviously I've got a lot more experience with, but Bloodborne has a lot more background and nuances stuff that you to look into. And the idea being that as you progress, you can look out and go, oh, okay, I see how this area connects to that area. And that's another good example of game design because it helps you with the sense of progression, the sense of journey. So you feel a sense of accomplishment to everything by looking up and going, oh, that's the starting area. Look how far away it is.
Oh yeah,
And it also adds to the daunting nature of it because you can go, oh god, look how far away from safety I am. You're gonna.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've got to say that I think Bloodborne did a much better job of making you feel like you want to play without a story. Having played both of them, I have no interest of ever going back to Dark Souls. I played it, I thought, yeah, I see the gameplay, I see the challenge, but there's nothing here that's like I feel like it's more of the what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Like the visual design of Bloodborne has something unique and different to it, whereas Dark Souls just feels kind of like a gritty, generic, everyday kind of game. Like all the cool.
Yeah, like if you had to think of a color to associate with Dark Souls, it's probably grey or brown.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Bloodborne still uses those greys and browns, although it has a lot of reds in as well. But it's something about the way that it's done. I couldn't even pinpoint exactly what it is, but they both have that same. There is no real story here. There is, you can find it, but it doesn't really mean anything. And the whole like world, you link back to the places you went to. They both do that, but for some reason, I just think Bloodborne does it so much better.
Preference, and like you said, Bloodborne has a very unique setting to it, being a very kind of fantastical, Victorian London stylings to it.
Yeah,
where it has that kind. Like, there's just not been many games that are around it outside of stuff like The Order 1886, I think it's called, the one that everyone hyped up and then was probably disappointed by because it wasn't as good. It was pretty bad. But the point is that Victorian England is a very kind of visually distinct period in time. It's like how Japan has the Sengoku period and the Edo period, where people like to reference and think of that. Because it is just unique from any other cultural setting at the time.
Yeah.
Which obviously the difference being like, Edo and Sengoku period stuff is used quite a lot, especially if you're looking into, Japan or Japanese anime and video games and occasionally Tecmo Koei. I mean, quite fun though. But whereas Western style fantasies have been done quite a lot, and have seen significant increase in popularity since the advent of Lord of the Rings. I say this as if I remember a time before Lord of the Rings. I clearly don't. But it's like many things in that you can trace back like the origins of lots of fantasy into Lord of the Rings.
It does seem quite odd though that in terms of like between East and West game developments, the one you think of in terms of RPGs, you think a lot more of Japan and the East and being we attribute it mostly to Final Fantasy, but if you think RPGs, like there is a difference between Western and Eastern JRPG. There is a difference between Western and Eastern RPGs. Like JRPG is its own genre, but even just as an umbrella term, I kind of wonder why Japan is much more prevalently known for this.
Simply put, it's because they had significantly more games of the genre at earlier periods in time. You have to remember, like turn-based, like for a lot of the time, RPGs were mostly turn-based, right? And turn-based Western RPGs are basically unheard of because everyone prefers action RPGs in the vein of Mass Effect and Dragon Age and so on and so forth. And even when you're looking into like the 90s though, which is released some of the most classic JRPGs like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. Like if we call those four like the golden age of Final Fantasy, because that is when everyone mostly got into the franchise.
Yes, no, I get that, but then at the same time, the turn-based RPGs, that was something we got from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Before that, it was mostly stuff like the Ultima games or things on PC, which barely had graphics.
Yeah.
This wasn't turn-based. It was honestly just trying to emulate D&D, which does have its turns, I will grant you, but not in the same structure.
The Final Fantasy games are a lot more mechanical in that regard, whereas D&D has kind of more. D&D you have to work on the basis that every turn you take in D&D has to happen in about a period of like a second. So it kind of makes sense. Whereas obviously traditional JRPGs that are turn-based make basically no sense. Like, man, it's a good thing the giant scorpion robot's just going to sit there and let me let me have all three characters cast thunder on it.
Well, yeah, but then this is why you approach things with, this is why they call it suspension of disbelief.
Well, I know, I was just point. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked because another thing I wanted to talk about. So I recently finished Gravity Rush 2. It's a really great game. It's probably going to get mentioned in about 11 months or so.
Which is pretty much what you say whenever you bring it up.
Gravity Rush 2 is basically everything I wanted. It's basically how I want every sequel to happen. It's like it has all the charm and the things you love about the first game, and then it improves on them. Like everything I didn't like about the first game, they went back and fixed.
I mean, that's what all sequels should be.
But they're not. And we could do a whole other podcast about good and bad sequels and how to structure sequels. But the one I wanted to get at is because Gravity Rush 2 has this huge sandboxy open world, right?
Yeah.
And part of what makes it good game design, other than the fact that the world is clearly built around your use of your gravity powers and the variations of those powers you acquire throughout the game. It's inherently to explore, to go back to my point from a previous cast, from the last cast about movement, because they not only give you more tools to explore this strange new world in, but they refine your older tools so that everything just flows a hell of a lot better. But what they also do to help you navigate this world, because of how it's structured, floating islands that are on different levels. So sometimes in most other cases it could be disorientating as to where you are. How they do it is they give every place a very unique color scheme to it. So like the first area you're in the game has like a very natural color scheme. And then if you go down into the seedy criminal underbelly, everything's all purple and dark and miserable. And if you go higher up, it's got this like lighter, brighter overtone to it. Like it's a J.J. Abrams movie.
Yeah, Borderlands is another series that does that thing very, very well in terms of its areas. Use color very effectively.
Well, this is important because it makes things easier to remember. It's because obviously human brains are designed for association. A smell, a sight, a sound, just triggers pathways in your brain that help you recall memories. So what they do by associating every place with a color, it makes them more visually distinctive. So you go, oh, okay, this place is all red, so that must mean something. So this is different from the place that's all blue. Yeah, and you see a lot of this use in films. So, for instance, the first Alien movie has a very kind of green-yellow undertone to a lot of its shots. Like there's just that color is repeated constantly throughout the film in various ways. And then when you go over to Aliens, the prevalent color of that is blue. Prevalent color of that is brown, and then for Alien Resurrection, well, who cares at that point?
Well, people who made it did evidently, but I see what you're driving at, yeah.
But so, like I said, color is super important, and it goes back to what Yuki said. Like Bloodborne Dark Souls has a lot of color, but it's also undercut by the fact that the prevalent color in most of the big areas is brown and grey, whereas Bloodborne does have like much more vibrant colors used. And I mean, if we had to associate color with Bloodborne, it's probably red because of blood.
Blood, yeah.
But it's like the levels change, and the colors change, and the palettes change, and it helps influence the player into understanding that shit's going down right now.
Yeah, like I haven't played Bloodborne myself, but from what I've seen of it, i.e. a couple of your streams, Train, I can associate colors red and blue very, very strongly with that. Although that may be just mostly because of that boss fight you were stuck in for a long time. But
yes,
still, like having that definitive color to it, like that's instantly something more vibrant. Going back to what I say on Dark Souls, it's a great game packaged in a shit game.
While we're on the topic of colors, I feel like I should mention that personally I don't associate anything with their color palettes, but I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that I'm colorblind.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are still like, if a game uses colors enough, I can still like associate with those things. Like with like the more Nintendo-y type games, you expect the more bright and vibrant colors, whereas the more like dull and grey colors you kind of associate with the AAA titles, Like they still have that level of association, even when I can't see them properly.
Well, yeah, perfect example I think would apply in your case is the difference between Wind Waker and Twilight Princess.
Blue. All of the blue. And green, actually.
Right. Well, yeah, but I'm saying one is representative.
Twilight Princess is just very dull. I get you.
Yes. Yeah.
Example, and how they upgrading in between systems. So you both play Gears of War, right?
Yes.
You remember the first game?
No.
Okay. But do you know what the prevalent color of that one was?
right?
Grey and brown. Do you remember the second game, though?
I remember a lot more green, personally.
The fact is that for the second game, they went more for a lot more color. Now, I mean, it wasn't still bright and vibrant, but there was still more color palettes injected into it, which makes and once again, various sections have different color palettes to differentiate them. So, like, one level is like just so green and yellow, but then it offset by the fact that the next level you're in is, kind of more natural colors, but still it's not just grays and browns. Now, the first game had like one or two levels that wasn't predominantly grays and browns, and it was probably one of the most standout levels because of it. And this
something
one's
stood out in Gears of War 1.
Section.
Fair. I
mean, you don't remember, but I remember.
Well, I didn't like Gears of War 1, so that might influence it.
War 3 once, and I've not even touched because I've don't own an Xbox and have no intention. But anyway, so color obviously plays a huge part into game design and how the player perceives certain things. Because obviously we also have associations with other colors, like red is bad, green is good, blue is also probably good.
I think that's somewhat dependent on the game, but yeah, I agree.
But I mean, in a core concept and like a core basis of like your traffic light system, red is stop, yellow is caution, green is good. Green is all fine. Like if you've got no other context, it's just ingrained in our society, at least in Western society, about those colors and their associations. Obviously, it's different in other countries that do have different colors for their traffic lights and different associations of certain colors, like the whole white and black disparity between East and West. We're over here, white is the color of purity, almost holy divine color, and black is a kind of dark. Well, obviously it's dark, but corruptive color, lack of color, but a color associated heavily with death.
Yeah.
For various reasons, and obviously over there, white is the color associated with death, and black is more traditionally just a color. I don't remember if it has any specific things, but white is the color associated with death in Japan, at least.
Yes, yeah. Whereas black is more of an indication of status, almost.
Something like that. The more traditional colors for status tends to be purple because it's a much harder color to get hold of.
Yes, look at British royalty, for example.
I believe it comes from the fact that purple dye was quite hard to get or make at the time.
More or less.
So it is comparatively rarer, therefore, it's a symbol of great wealth that they have this.
Yeah.
But, to go back to mechanics, other things I really want to see, like in game design, is just the nice little touches. So I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn recently. And I mean recently because I bought it, yesterday. And it's a good game so far. I have my only complaint is you're gonna be, wow, this is nitpicky, but you have a spear and a bow, right?
I didn't even know you had a spear.
Comfortably on the character model when it's not in use. The spear does not. The spear has no place. When it's not in use, it's just gone. When it's in use, it just pulls out of hammer space and you use it. And I don't like the fact that the spear is a core weapon. You have this basically from the start. And I don't like the fact that it doesn't sit on the character model.
That's... Yeah.
Like I said, it's nitpicky, and I'm not saying it impacts, my overall opinion of the game thus far, but it's something I don't like. It just feels lazy to me. For all of the good game design going into it, motion, movement and travel, and combat is really fun, and hunting is actually good, and stealth's pretty good so far. I just don't like that. I want more games that, I'm not asking for, realistic depictions where everyone's got every gun, every weapon and item on them at all times. You can see it. But I just want it to be, if you're going to have the bow, you should also have the spear, because they're practically the same from a gameplay standpoint, from, a player perspective. They're a core tool you have, and it should be represented in that regard.
Well, yeah, the standard is there that it should be maintained. I get what you're saying.
So you never see anyone with a holster on it, but then you never see any weapons with any holsters or on the player model. So it's just more acceptable to me in that regard.
Oh yeah, because you don't think about it. But when you see someone, drawing the bow off their back and then just pulling a spear from nowhere, I get how that can be an irritant.
just
feel
go on
like
to
that,
grab.
that ties in a lot to like consistency in game design, and that being
Yes.
like a key part that a lot of games don't exactly follow along with, where they'll do something for like half the game and then all of a sudden, we'll just swap it up and not really explain how or why we're doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I can't think of any specific examples that don't do that right now, but maybe one of you two can.
There's a lot of games that kind of shift the paradigm between sort of the halfway and the three-quarter way point. And more case than not, it hurts them. Biggest one I can think of is Final Fantasy 13. Which, don't get me wrong, does not start out well.
Wow.
I think
No.
and this is once again more from a narrative structure, but this affects the gameplay. Is Bioshock 1, and because I mentioned this because I was literally talking to someone earlier about Bioshock 1 because I frequently do this. I was just discussing, hey, remember Bioshock 1? That was like great. But once you hit the halfway point and you get to the like twist of Bioshock 1, which I'm not going to reveal in case nobody's played it. But once that point of the big reveal, there's a very noticeable shift in like how the game's structured. It feels a lot less focused, a lot more kind of fetch questy. For a lot of your stuff, I'll just go find this for X person, but it doesn't feel quite as well structured as compared to the first half of the game.
Yeah,
just because there's a less tangible goal about it. And
honestly, 9 times out of 10, the reason of that is development time ran out on them very, very quickly.
change the fact that it is poor design. Like it might be poor. Like I don't think any game is badly designed badly designed from the get go. But I do think all the decisions that go into it do have impacts, and it's not very fair to talk about instances without ignore instances where development time might have impacted or budgetary constraints because not being funny. That's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah. I'm not giving it as an excuse. I'm just explaining that's kind of why it happened.
I accept that. But this is the cause of a lot of issues in games. But I still think it's a point that should be addressed and should be looked into, because like lots of good game design choices probably happen by accident.
Yeah.
I also love is the little touches in games. So I remember when I first played GTA 5 all those years ago, and like when I found out that you could press a button and the roof of your car could swap between up and down convertible mode, I was just like astounded because that's such a stupid innocuous little thing, and they went and programmed it in.
Yeah.
And you kind of see similar things. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a very good example, mostly for the end boss fight, not the final boss, but the boss fight with the character called The End.
Yes.
And the reason why the end stands out as well designed is because there's not just one way to take him down. Oh, there's not even just two. There's about 7 different ways you can potentially do that fight or avoid it entirely.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of ties into what Yuki was saying. Like, when it demonstrates that thought has gone into it, that alone impacts things immeasurably. Even if it is just the little things.
It's less. I mean, it's not quite as good when you get to when you're in MGS2 and you're talking to someone and like, oh, hang on, let's swap over to codec just so that we could, discuss this more privately, and not just totally because we don't have enough budget to animate this whole cutscene of 2 characters talking. It's far easier just to do the codec.
Yeah. But honestly, it could be either way. Like I like games acknowledging game mechanics, even if it doesn't really make sense.
I think there's a bit of a. I think there needs to be a bit of a limit, though, like acknowledging game mechanics and then just outright saying, okay, no, but seriously, let's talk into our radios when we're 2 feet away from each other because it's somehow safer.
Well, it is. The codec's never been hacked. Sorry, we're going into story things.
Yeah, but if they're 2 feet away from each other, surely anyone who would be able to hear them in their room would be able to hear them on the codec anyway?
I mean...
Because they do, talk out loud. We know that. We know they talk out loud because people have overheard them on codecs before.
True.
Like I said, to me, it's a clear case of they just didn't have the time or the budget to animate the whole scene, so they went for this really cheap option, and it feels really cheap, and it's so jarring to me because, Metal Gear Solid is one of those game series that does have a lot of good design choices. It has a lot of terrible choices for other aspects, but there's good choices and ideas that go into its design. Never let it be said, Kojima doesn't know how to make games interesting. Not good, interesting.
Well, I'd say good, but I'm an abated fan, so.
Yes, but we're not discussing we're not really about discussing all the various inconsistencies with plot. MGS3 is the standout to me because it's the best from a gameplay perspective. It's the best from the mechanics perspective. And it's just the best overall structured. Sonic 4, though, is really badly designed in a lot of regards. Like, it's a stealth game where stealth is basically discouraged.
No, it's not that it's discouraged, it's that it's optional.
To be honest, I just feel there's not much incentive to use the stealth mechanics. Like, for example, Deus Ex, Human Revolution specifically, because it's the one I've played the most.
Yeah.
Like, it's great because, yes, there's two ways to play, stealth or guns blazing, but there's incentive to using both. I think it's the poor man's choice to not go stealth, personally, but that is a personal preference to how I play that game.
Well, yeah, considering you basically gain double experience from not going non-lethal. The game itself encourages you to do that.
Yeah. Even beyond that, what I mentioned this before last time in the last cast, Deus Ex is another game where it presents you with a problem, but not just the one solution. It has like 4 different ways you can advance the plot, advance to the end of the area in. And I did have it multiple times where I struggled to do something one way, only to discover I could have easily done it the second way or the third way.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that rewards exploration.
Yeah. And it rewards creative thinking, because, at times I thought, oh man, if only there was a vent. Oh, wait, where was this vent? It was behind the vending machine, son of a bitch.
Yeah. That was one of the kind of problems of one of the augments with Mankind Divided, in that it was basically a smart vision, i.e. it turns everything into the detective vision from Arkham City. So you can just see where hidden stuff is, which kind of defeats the object.
That reminds me, I also want to talk about Arkham Knight.
Oh, no. Okay.
I mean, once again, leaving aside complaints with the story, as many as I have, one thing I really don't like about Arkham Knight is the fact that they had to use the Batmobile, and they had to use it because they made damn sure that you had to use it. Like, the amount of ways the game goes out of its way to just shoehorn the Batmobile in, the fact that I feel it negatively impacts the game in a lot of ways. Like, it robs the game of unique boss fights, with just tank battle after tank battle after tank battle, with very little variation in the way of variation between those.
Yeah, I get that. This might not be the best comparison, but I'll make my point and then do it. I think it's better to have a new element almost over exaggerated in its presence, rather than it be introduced and not at all necessary. This going on to one of my favorite games, Kingdom Hearts 2. That introduces a lot of things in terms of how you fight and what you can do in battles. But the problem is you don't for the majority of the game and for big mobs of enemies, you don't really use them. You just use what you're used to, which is usually mashing the X button or reaction commands. When you've got, you can transform into alternate forms. You can whip out a second Keyblade. You can use limits with your party. You've got so much to do in combat, but you don't use them.
With that is a problem that I always have in games, where it's because it's a very limited resource and it's such a powerful ability in many regards, because it does makes you that much more physically stronger, or magically stronger, or it does significant damage. You always think, I can't waste it on these mooks. I have to save it for something that's worthwhile, because what if I run against a boss that I really need it and I don't have it?
Yeah, I know this mentality well.
But then this is a mentality, and it's kind of meant to be the balancing factor of a lot of powerful abilities in games, but I can't say it's not a frustrating thing of, I have the cool thing, but I dread using the cool thing because I might not have the cool thing for when I need it. Only to find you never need the cool thing. You could have just you've been doing the cool thing from the start. Like Resident Evil 7, a game I also played recently, has a Magnum in it, right? It's like one of the most powerful weapons of the game. Never fucking use it, though, because there's basically no ammo for it. So I always think, shit, I'm going to need this for a boss fight. Crap. I can't use it to get my revenge on the enemies that have killed me before. I can't use it to escape dangerous situations because, well, if I'm going against a boss and I don't have this, I feel like I'm dead. And maybe that's not the case. You could get through the whole game without it. But it's just that sense of, I need this. And every time you waste a bullet of it, or you waste a resource of this, cool thing, you feel kind of wrong for doing it. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to regret that later.
I think I know this feeling because I play games exactly like it. I go through Final Fantasy, never using my elixirs or ethers, or if I can't buy more of them, I don't use it. Which makes games with breakable weapons in them an absolute joy for me. But I can't tell if that's really something that the game reinforces or if it's a mentality brought to it by the player. And if it's a mentality brought by the player, it's kind of hard to blame the game for it.
Blame the game. I'm not. It's definitely 100% the player, because the game never really tries to tell you. The game never puts up, unless the game deliberately puts up a warning saying, oh, you cannot beat this boss unless you have the cool thing, because 9 times out of 10, they'll give you the, 11th hour super power up as you need it for that fight.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that you always just kind of have, but it's just, a player thing, but it's still important in that regard, because it's something that needs, because as much as we might talk about games designs and, us looking at them, we have to consider games are designed around us, the player.
I was gonna point out that
Go ahead.
Considering all three of us play games in that regard, where you get an item and you don't want to use it because you can't get any more of it. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually threw a Master Ball at a Pokemon in a Pokemon game. I think it would have been Ruby and Sapphire. That was
Probably.
a long fucking time ago. Because they're like, well, you only get one. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to use it yet because I might find something better. It's like, oh, look, this is the shiny version of the best legendary in the game. Oh, yeah, but I might find something better. No, I won't find something better. But that is just such a player mentality that everyone has. Like, that, I don't think that's just specific to us three. I'm certain that most people are like that, So I really think games should do something, make some effort to make us think, you actually want to use this. There is a good reason to use this. Don't not use it,
Well, I'd argue that they kind of do by the situation the train brought up, i.e. when you're up shit creek and you've got a really good way to get out of it, yes, it's limited ammo. Yes, you're probably not going to be able to find more of it. But you know what? If it's between life or death, you should probably use it.
I guess, but I feel like most games don't do that. Going back to my Pokemon example, name one example where you think, yes, I should throw a Master Ball at it, instead of just thinking, well, I might as well just keep throwing like all my 600,000 Ultra Balls at it until I catch it.
I mean, just shiny legendary.
Then my problem though comes in is that I get to the big boss fight and I'm like, shit though, what if the next boss is even tougher than that? I don't think I can waste this.
Yeah, that is a mentality I've had many times, and you just end up keeping the really strong weapon, and it's like, oh wait, no, the game's over now. So the only way you'd know to use that is if you've already played the game before. Yeah,
which, fair enough, I suppose, but it still doesn't help, like, especially if it's those games that you're most likely never going to play again.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of games I think I could play that a million times, and I'll know exactly where and when to use it and when to lose it. But then it's like Kingdom Hearts, no matter how many times I play it, I still think, I'm going to save the drive for the upcoming boss, though. I'm getting my ass kicked because I haven't played Proud Mode in a year, but that boss is going to be a nightmare though. I can't use the drives, got to just muscle through this, bash my face against this wall again and again and again, and eventually it will break.
It's weird because I do also want to talk about Kingdom Hearts 2 in an example of really good game design, despite bringing it up here.
I'll segue into that, and we'll talk a bad game design, and I will also use Kingdom Hearts 2 as an example, but I'm also going to use two other games I like, Persona 3 and 4.
Okay.
I think you can kind of guess where this is going.
I actually can't.
What all three have in common is really bad game design, and also Twilight Princess. They have terrible, terrible intros. Not terrible in the sense of how they introduce you to the story. Oh no, terrible in the sense of how they introduce you to the gameplay, which is by not introducing you to the gameplay, by making you sit around for ages and ages and ages. It's a good hour into Persona 4 before you can actually actually start to play.
Yeah, that is a big point against Persona 4.
And like I said, these are all games I do enjoy and have played many times, but I do just find can't deny that there's a part of me that goes, always thinks, Jesus, next time I'm just going to create a save file just after this prologue bullshit so that I have to do it again, only I always forget. And those are poor game design choices, because I'm not saying every game should just start with the big action set piece that a film has a cold open, but it should at least have some brevity into it.
Yeah, no, it's a delicate art of a game actually teaching you how to play. Like, I know Ego Raptor's got into this in his sequelitis things, especially with Mega Man X. The intro to Kingdom Hearts 2 is legendarily, well, a lot of people would argue flawed. I would as well. I like it, but that's because I think it does a really good job of teaching you the game mechanics slowly while also introducing you to elements of a new story. I will never not say that it's too long. 3 hours is way too long for any tutorial. But
it also severely hampers, replayability.
Oh, yeah. This is why I have a save file at the end of the Roxas prologue.
Kind of wrong, and I feel the player shouldn't have to go to those kind of lengths just to enjoy a game. And on the one hand, yes, it's good in that it does slowly teach you, but I also don't think a player needs to be slowly taught. Like, players aren't idiots. If you give us a control,
no.
If you drop us in the middle of a game, the slap back middle, if you have a minute to just work out the core controls, you can probably muddle along decently enough. You might not know all the ins and outs, but you don't really need to be taught. Need extensive cutscenes that tell you about how to use the jump button.
Well, yeah, but then there's a difference between being told what the controls are and being taught better context for them. Sorry, just looking at my shelf trying to figure out a good point. Well, let's go back to Devil May Cry. At the end of the day, all you need for that is, a list of buttons in front of you with what they do. But the whole elements of the combo system, the whole stringing together attacks and keeping it going longer to cause more and more damage, that's something you have to pick up through playing and through the game actually taking effort to almost show you what you're doing.
But that's kind of the whole point from a gameplay, from the mechanic standpoint of Devil May Cry, is that it's about self-discovery. It doesn't do you favors by telling you, having sequence breaking dialogue buttons, options that come out that tell you, if you press the square button multiple times, you can do a combo attack. And it rewards experimentation and playing. And the game does also point out numerous times about how the style meter alone is enough, I feel, to teach a player because eventually as the player plays, they'll realize, if I do all these different cool things together in a chain, that makes the style meter go up.
Exactly.
And if I do the same move again and again and again, it doesn't go up. So Devil May Cry works because it teaches you without having to stop the game to teach you.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay then.
But when I say the game does teach you how to do it, okay, I probably worded it very poorly there, and I do apologize. But by featuring elements that encourage it, that is what teaches you. It's like Deus Ex Human Revolution, the fact that you get nearly twice the amount of experience for going stealthy and not killing anyone. It encourages you to be more inventive by giving you a better reward for doing it. And that way you find, whole new pathways. You find the many solutions to one problem. It's, that has to be an element of, a good element of design, I believe.
It all comes down to, it allows for so much, Deus Ex Human Revolution is a game that allows for so much, so many variations in how you play, not even counting just the RPG element, not even counting the stuff we covered, we just have the RPG elements, the dialogue trees, It also depends on the augmentations you do, the side quests you choose to do. I mean, the environments you explore, all the stuff you can, it's not even just the side quests, but just, going around a building that is clearly there for, just the explorers in us. And that is good design because it encourages so many different ways to play the game from so many different perspectives that it's all encompassing in a good way. Now, I respect not all games can appeal to multiple different players at once. And this is an example of where Deus Ex had an advantage being a very specific kind of action RPG. But Mass Effect is, in theory, a similar concept. But I have my own misgivings about Mass Effect, but it's the same thing in that it's all about variations in how you play. Now, granted, those variations were hyped up and didn't get quite the payoff they should have got, but, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
it's still you game and play it totally differently. Not even in just the arbitrary, here's your moral choice. Do you save the busload of orphans or do you feast on kitten tonight? Which I like games like Infamous, but I'm not going to deny and say that their moral choices are well designed.
Yeah, the moral choice thing kind of got popularized by Mass Effect, but Mass Effect is, well, BioWare games in general, I feel, are ones where they're not, like, it's not choosing between kicking a puppy and saving the bus full of orphans,
Really? Mass Effect did have that problem. The only time it had a moral choice that I was legitimately considering was in Mass Effect 2, Legion's loyalty mission, because I felt that was the one time where a choice, like, neither option was really wrong and neither option was really right. Like, both had very serious implications, and that I liked that. Another example, GTA 4, which, for all of its other flaws, I did think the final choice of that game is one of the few games that made me go, which do I pick? Because it's a matter of a moral quandary by not presenting the player with the obvious option. GTA 5 has a rather hilarious thing where you have the option of killing one of your protagonists or just saying fuck it and killing all of your enemies. And of course I chose the fuck it option because that makes the most sense. Like, why not side with all the characters I've been with up until this point in the game?
Oh, yeah, I feel it's kind of stupid for the game to ask you to murder one of your protagonists. Like, I don't know anyone who's played that game who hasn't gone for the fuck you, kill all of the enemies option, because, that's kind of what video games teach us is how we want to go.
And it's also what makes sense for the characters, the GTA way. Screw the system, I'll just do what I want. Which, maybe some people could argue is the entire point of that moral choice. But like I said, 4 is unique in that neither option particularly was good. You basically had the choice of, do you get revenge and forego, like, doing a very profitable job, or do you bury the hatchet, do the job, and pocket a sizable amount of income? Now, either result doesn't really, no matter which choice you make, doesn't really impact the final mission, but it's still a worthwhile choice, and it did make me think and consider, which one would I pick in this scenario? Because, there's very clear benefits to getting the revenge. It's mostly personal, and there's very clear benefits to just getting the cash. Once again, mostly personal.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Good moral choices have benefits and flaws no matter which path you take. Mass Effect, like, I still feel it does it well, but there are a lot of things that either do or don't matter. Like in the second game, when you're confronting the reporter in the infamous scene where you can deck the woman, like, you can... Sorry?
I think she's a member of the press, but I think the worst one is stuff like the Arachne, who don't ever really get a proper payoff, at least not to the level you'd expect to get one if you choose to save them in the first game.
Well, yeah, but then that's a whole different argument regarding, the payoff of various elements over the course of multiple games, which is a very, very hard science to do.
But this is kind of where one could argue that choice-based gaming is inherently flawed. So let's take Telltale Games, for instance.
Aye.
Now, you might like them, right?
I do like them.
And, you can like them all you want, but can you really tell me that that many of the choices you make in stuff like The Walking Dead are really impact the game hugely? Like, sure. To go into minor spoilers here, outside of, you have the final choice of the season. Well, one of the final choices of season 1.
Wait! Don't spoil the final choice of the first game because I haven't played it.
Okay, I'll stop then. What I was going to say is that. One of those, that one choice you make that's supposed to influence one of the major aspects of the end of season 1, right, Sam? You know which one I'm talking about. Where
I know the one.
And it's like,
don't mention anything.
No, I know.
Like,
but
I know the point you're going to make. Is what I'm saying.
I'm not going to mention anything beyond that. But I'm saying is that it doesn't matter which of those options you pick. You'd think it would, given the context of presented, but it doesn't.
Well, yeah, because like in terms of what we can get into a game, there's only so far our choices can or cannot go. Like Telltale, it's a case of there is ultimately one story being told. No matter what Telltale game you're playing, no matter what the universe is, no matter which story branches it is, there is only one story being told. What differs is what is the pathways through it. You will always reach certain conclusions.
I'll give you a great example. In the Game of Thrones Telltale game, there's a point where you meet with a character and you have two options. Either let him do what he wants in order to placate him so he doesn't kill you, or stand up to him. And no matter what option you take, he's just going to kill you anyway. Like, literally the same scene, he'll kill you. And it's like, we'll kind of just wonder why even bother giving me the illusion of choice at that point. Just give me a, cutscene and be done with it.
Well, okay, let's compare. The Wolf Among Us, my personal favourite of the Telltale lot, apart from Tales of the Borderlands now that I think about it. But that one, like, you are ending up at the same endpoint no matter where. But along the way, there are characters who you are going to lose if you do things one way or the other. There are characters who will come out of it hating you, depending on what you do. Like, yes, the main story structure and where you're heading, that cannot change because it's not feasibly possible to follow it to the kind of extent a lot of gamers would like. But at the same time, you cannot question that you do have a very sizable impact on what happens in the story.
Not saying that every choice is pointless or has no real payoff in that regard. I'm just saying is that there's a disturbing number of times where a choice that you feel should mean something ends up meaning nothing.
Well, with some characters, it isn't necessarily going to mean anything. Like, whether you try to approach things diplomatically or angrily, if their intentions are that you're dead at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen.
Quantic Dream, for instance, and Heavy Rain, and more specifically Beyond Two Souls, because I watched a playthrough of more or less the whole game, which I don't know if either of you played Beyond Two Souls.
I haven't played Beyond Two Souls, but I have played Heavy Rain.
Actually impossible to fail at Beyond Two Souls. It's like even if you ignore as many QTEs as possible and just dick around for as long as you want, the game will still just railroad you into continuing the story in some regard, or pretending as if you did things flawlessly even when you clearly didn't. And it's like, what is the point of this game? Why is it a game? Why is it not just an animated movie at this point?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'll give Heavy Rain this, like, at least if you failed enough of the QTEs, that did influence the direction of the story in a lot of really surprising ways, I must say.
And, just really frustrates me because I'm a big person about, I hate walking sims because I feel they don't have gameplay and therefore they're not games. It's like, fine, if you want to make an animated movie, go for it. But if I at least need to have something to, even if it's like escaping from an invincible enemy, as long as there's input from me, things I can do that feel like they have an impact on the game world, then fine. If it's just walking from one point to another and waiting for the cutscene to trigger and tell me about the mysterious background plot where it turns out that man is the real monster all along. Like, if I have to see or play one more fucking game where the end twist is, oh, by the way, you were insane. But see, other games that do that but have actual gameplay are great. Everyone loves Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
That is, you're kind of nuts. But at least that's also, but that also ties back into even weird. What makes Silent Hill made it such a good series is because, and then America got hold of the development and it just all went to shit.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I like Downpour, but yeah.
I just have too many things. I don't like how literally the best ending of Downpour is just how the two good endings of Downpour, one of them is just bugged. Like, if you play the best ending, there's literally no reason for Murphy to even be in Silent Hill. You kind of think it's just the town just being a dick for the sake of it.
Surely that's the meta plot of all the Silent Hill games, that the town is a massive dick.
Because there's very real reasons as to why things are the way they are for all the other games. But anyway, what makes Silent Hill so good and what makes it a great traditional survival horror game is that, yes, there's limited resources. Yes, you have save points scattered around. And yes, enemies were strong and you didn't want to use your weapons. But the difference is you had other things you could do. You had, melee weapons you could use instead of your guns. You could just run past enemies instead of having to fight them and, risk taking, massive health drops.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, it goes back to Evil Within, because I personally loathe the game. It just keeps on saying, yeah, you don't have any ammo for your guns, so here, fight this massive horde of enemies. Okay, can I not fight them? No. They have a stealth mechanic built into the game, but it's only applicable to 2 sections. I think that's also wrong, because it's like, why include these mechanics if you're not going to capitalize on them? Like, make it so not necessarily every section can be bypassed with stealth, because not even, like, Last of Us has that. And that action stealth game. But there are sections where you're just going to have to fight, and yeah, they're scripted, but they're acceptable for what they are, and because you have the resources available at hand, it's less of a problem. Evil Within, though, just has obnoxious enemies. Oh, and insta-kills in some of the later levels. Just flat-out insta-kills that just require so much out of your way to avoid. Like, there's one level where 3 times you'll just be randomly chased by this ghost enemy, and if he touches you, you'll die. But he can spawn basically wherever. So if you're in basically in a room that only has one exit, and he spawns in that exit, yeah, good luck.
Yeah. It's elements like that. It's just like, I feel that the game should tell you, oh yeah, he could spawn anywhere, but there are obviously behind the scenes mechanics that prevent them from doing that and irreversibly fucking you.
Which is another reason why I don't like it.
Yeah.
But, and that's just a game that has poor design. It had nice ideas, but inherently flawed design. And this ties into, I've always thought that a good story can make a game, can justify some gameplay mechanic errors. And likewise, good gameplay can make me ignore a terrible story. As is the case with stuff like, MGS2.
Are we talking great gameplay or great story in this one? Because it could go either way.
Because it plays well, it does everything you expect. Like, I have a personal thing where if a game just does what it's supposed to do, like if it's a racing game where the racing is good, if it's a sandbox game where it makes exploring the world fun, if it's a shooting game which does the shooting well, then that game is a success in my eyes from a gameplay perspective. Metal Gear Solid 2 does its stealth action elements perfectly fine, so it's a success from a gameplay perspective. I mean, I can't think of currently apart from annoying stuff like the backtrack, a lot of the backtracking, which isn't even nearly as bad as MGS1 had. I think MGS1 had kind of inexcusable backtracking for some of the sections. I think Meryl I think the Sniper Wolf Meryl situation was especially bad.
I will have to take your word for it. It's been a long time since I played MGS1.
Unlike the fact that you get to this section, you have to have a sniper battle with Sniper Wolf, but you need to run all the way back to basically the first area of the game to pick up a sniper rifle just to come back and do a battle that you're going to lose anyway. So I feel like if you'd at least had the sniper rifle and then did the battle immediately there, and that was still the game's way of teaching you how to do the sniper, it would have been perfectly fine and justifiable, because the conclusion would be the same either way.
I suppose it just feels like
a redundant chunk of time.
Yeah, it just feels like when I have no problem with fetch quests, but when they're packaged in with another element, it immediately becomes tedious because you realise you could be doing something better.
Those are fine. It's just depending on the context of everything. Like, a friend of mine was just recently playing System Shock 2, which has fetch quests which has fetch quests in it, but more specifically, it has fetch quests where it doesn't tell you where anything is.
Oh,
that's a large environment, more or less, which isn't fun or doesn't even sound fun. Like, you just hear it, you're just like, oh. So, imagine if you were in Grand Theft Auto, right? Grand Theft Auto 5, in that whole world map.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, you need to find these 3 things. Okay, where do I find them? Well, we'll tell you that one is in Los Santos, and then one is in the desert. And then 2 are in the desert. And it's like, well, that does not narrow it down. That's going to require a whole lot of tedious exploration and pointless exploration. Like, as I said, I'm all for exploration, but should be encouraged, not forced.
Yeah, it's like, if I'm doing a fetch quest in Skyrim or whatever, I don't necessarily need a marker that I can follow to exactly where the item is. Just tell me where it is, and I will explore, and I will find it.
Yeah. And, I mean, as I say, I think that for sandbox games, exploration should be encouraged in multiple ways. The movement is the big thing for me. That's why Gravity Rush 2 is such a success for me, because movement is so fun, and then they made it better. It's like, how could I not enjoy this? And then they took the environment from the first game and restructured it from the ground up and changed it and made it so different that, yeah, it's familiar, but it's also different enough that you're like, hang on a sec, wait, what? Explore, and a whole entire city. You know, basically you have double the amount of places to explore in the game. And that's just a case of a good sequel. And like I said, I feel like a later cast could be the benefits of having a good and bad sequel, or, you know, how to make sequels good and how they sometimes just turn out poorly, because there's a lot we could discuss about good and bad sequels.
Oh yeah.
I think Arkham City is a great sequel to Arkham Asylum. I think Arkham Asylum is a better game, but I think Arkham City is a great sequel.
Okay.
I think Knight's a terrible sequel, though. In fact, I think Arkham Knight's a terrible game. Don't buy it.
I mean, I disagree. I say if you're a Batman fan, buy Arkham Knight, but
I think if you're a Batman, but more upset. I was upset, and I don't even like him.
Okay. Yeah.
But the point is that I could enjoy, even though I don't particularly like Batman or his mythos, I could enjoy Arkham Asylum and Arkham City because they had great core mechanics and gameplay to it. And like you mentioned before about the game, like Yuki mentioned before about games shaking up. Sometimes games shake up gameplay for like sections, and it's great. Some of the most memorable stuff ever. Watch Dogs, which my cousin owned once, and I didn't play much of Watch Dogs because I really didn't care for it because it just looked like another GTA clone. And then I got to this like optional side quest, side mission thing you could do, which let you play as a giant spider tank in, Chicago. Oh, it was only a cordoned off section of Chicago, but it's like, wow, this was so unique and interesting and fun. Why wasn't this the game? Why did we just get another discount bland GTA clone that's not even that fun?
No.
It's had something unique because, it offered, movement. And obviously, movement was fun because you had, speed, you had jumping abilities. You could also climb walls. And wall crawling is fun. It's a whole other axis to play with. More tools to the player enjoy is always a positive. That's why that's why Spider-Man 2 is so well loved, because it's just got so many inherently good mechanics to it. So web swinging, I always say, is probably one of the best ways you could possibly move around a sandbox area. It has basically everything you could want. It's got the speed, it's got the variation, it's got speed. You can get anywhere relatively quick. It's got variations. There's so many different ways you could hook onto objects and dart around and run up walls and crawl and jump off buildings, leapfrog your way down a street. And it's fun to go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And that is the core of sandbox games to me. If you've not done that, if I can't hand on heart say I wouldn't want to skip, there's more times where I didn't want to skip than times I did. Because, we all have that. You look at the event marker and you say, oh, God, I've got to go 1,000 meters. You see just how far something is, and it can seem daunting, and sometimes you want to skip. But some games, it's just like, oh, okay, I'll just go for a happy little jaunt.
Yeah, I don't mind travel, like long distances into a lot of games, but maybe I just have the patience for it. Or if the game's got a good radio. But
comes into variations. So, Grand Theft Auto is another example. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to finish this point.
Yeah, that's fine.
Grand Theft Auto, you don't just have the one way you can travel, though, do you? You've got all... Okay, so apart from all the cars and the bikes and the variations therein of all of those, you've got planes, trains, aircraft, boats, submarines, jetpack in San Andreas. The whole point is that you have just so many different ways to approach something as simple as going to a house to start the next mission. Then it just becomes more of a game of, well, how can I get there in the most fun way possible? So I had it numerous times where it's just like, I've got to go up into the desert. Oh, cool. I'm just going to jump my motorcycle onto the back of a freight train and ride that all the way up there.
Yeah, why not?
Exactly, because the options are there, and it's just a good, how good game design works. Players have freedom in that regard.
Yeah, like this is why a lot of people I know consider that the Saints Row series only really got good once they introduced superpowers to the mix. Because that was when, it got fun to move.
I think it's the second one because that also introduced helicopters and planes. It just introduced like cool, crazy vehicles alongside, the more the standardized GTA abilities. And then, yeah, you get into superpowers.
Yeah.
But, that's fine. Like, they're both perfectly valid ways to travel. Saints Row 1, though, garbage, if you will. Because not only is the driving poorly done in that game, like, it's just not fun. It's terrible to drive. It's slow. It's clunky. But it's also, that's all you can do, drive. Maybe there's boats, but there's boats in sandbox games are always hilarious because they're basically pointless. They are there as an added feature.
Yeah, I get that.
And no matter how many times a game might try and shoehorn in or use the jet ski to travel out here, it's still not going to change the fact that 9 times out of 10, if you're moving around the sandbox, you're not going on the water, unless you have like a hover car. But
water travel is really something that's done. Like, it's kind of a miracle GTA 5 managed to wrangle the submarine into that and make it vaguely interesting.
Well, it's because it's an unexplored area, area as far as GTA is concerned. Because I remember the underwater segments in the original San Andreas.
Yeah, which arguably were very detailed and very present. But the problem is there was no good way to access them because Carl's lung capacity was shit.
So there's lots of potential variations you could do with underwater travel and stuff. And obviously we've seen Wind Waker so that Yuki can take part is a game that's built around traveling on water.
Which game is this, sorry?
Yes, you're correct.
Wind Waker.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Water travel is important, but I'd say in the first game it was kind of shit because it was really slow.
Yeah, water travel was kind of bullshit until the HD remake because it took so fucking long.
And then really all they did was just make it faster. It's still not really fun. Yeah, there are different islands to explore, I guess, but
poor game design though, and the game that we like.
Yeah, I mean,
but one of the core mechanics of it, sailing, is fun, and from what I hear, that's the same problem Skyward Sword has.
I wouldn't know. I don't think any of us have played it.
Yeah, I haven't played Skyward Sword.
Well, from what traveling, because I think you use an eagle to fly around to the various locations.
Oh yeah, I've played the first bit where you fly around on a weird bird thing. You really don't do that much actually. You kind of fly around in the sky bit and then just zoom downwards. Like right now you're in the place you want to be. It's almost like an overworld map, but in 3D.
Like Pokemon.
Yeah, sort of. It's kind of lame.
Right.
Well, I'd imagine close to classic Final Fantasies where you're on a character that in 4 steps can cross a continent.
Yeah, kind of similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think that flight is a woefully underutilized mechanic for various games.
Oh fuck yeah!
Flight is like web swinging, where it's such an inherently fun mechanic to play around with that sadly no one really wants to. The best you might get is glorified gliding.
Well, apparently it's a really hard mechanic to get right because there's how many games can you think of where you fly?
In general, or in a sandbox game?
There's the most recent Saints Row game you fly in, unless there's been one since it.
No, you are right. There is Saints Row. There's, vehicular-wise, there is the GTA games, but...
Just see they introduced the jetpack.
Yeah, But even then, there are examples that are few and far between, it feels.
I'm not saying every game should have flight. I just think it's a mechanic that's woefully underused.
Oh yeah, no, of course. I'm not saying every game should have flight either. It's just I'd like a game where I can fly.
But I kind of wonder if it reaches the problem that we had with modern 3D Sonic games. The reason why Sonic Unleashed and Generations have to be basically 2 different games stapled together. In that it's just really difficult to have to create the sheer amount of terrain and levels you actually need for a Sonic game because you're blitzing through those levels at lightning speed.
Yeah.
And Werehog and past Sonic because they're slow enough that you can build levels for in a reasonable time frame. Because those 3D Sonic games are only kind of basically 2.5D a lot of the time. But even then, you're still traveling so quickly and bypassing just literal miles and miles of worth of level design.
Well, yeah, but that's why you trick it, so it doesn't look like you're doing all that much, but you are. Or no, other way around, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sam, it's the other way around. It makes it look like you're not... It makes you look like you're traveling really far, but actually you haven't really gone very far at all. And if you slowly walk through the level, you'll get through it not that much of a slower pace than you would if you were running it.
Exactly, yeah. It's what you discover when you have access to like a free camera in pretty much any game that's not a sandbox thing. Like the second you move out of what you're not supposed to be able to see, you'd be surprised at how little is there.
It's a classic trick to deload or to unload stuff after it's no longer needed. That's why you have pathways just closed off to you inexplicably that you wonder, man, why did that rubble just fall down? Oh, it's so that we don't have to load that bit of the level anymore. It's like to go back to Silent Hill, where it's a case of good game design that came about mostly by accident. It's the fog. It's such an iconic thing, and it plays so well into the game's atmosphere and everything else that's great about it, and making the enemies even more threatening because, oh god, what's that black shit coming out of the mist? And the whole reason for the fog is the render distance was terrible for the PS1, and they couldn't really do it otherwise.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately it got fixed on the HD re-releases of 2 and 3, because obviously the PS3 has significantly better render distance than the PS2 did.
Mm.
So it just physically could a significant chunk of the town, and therefore cuts down on the fog.
Yeah.
I've always kind of said that oh crap, I can't remember what I've always said now. Basically, I can't think of the exact wording, but essentially hardships breed creativity. Adversity breeds creativity. That was it. You see it countless times where people have been in situations from a creative standpoint where it's like, crap, how do I make that? Jaws, to use films as an example, is a film that is so influential in how it's shot and how it makes use of the environment to its advantage, and a lot of that is because they just physically couldn't get the shark to work. So they had to play around with it. They had to use implications to show the shark. They just had to use just the fin. And, this is something you see a lot of films do, where they'll have the implication that something's there, like the rustling of branches, the snapping of twigs. Something is there, but you can't see it. And it's a massive money saver, but it also gets the audience invested. It's just like, oh shit, what's that? I don't know what that is. Because, you're always going to be unnerved by the things you can't see.
Oh,
the
yeah,
mind
of course.
is more powerful. It's far more powerful tool for fear than any kind of monster you could create.
Yeah, that is another element that has to be considered when you're building up games like this. It's how much or how little do you devote in terms of resources to various, elements. Like, frankly, if the player isn't going to see it, why focus on it?
An example of a series that also changed its game design, Dead Space 1 is a game that's in a lot of sections is more focused on atmosphere and environment, and it uses environment to its advantage. So you have extremely well lit areas that are well lit in the sense that they cast really kind of imposing shadows on the player. So it's about dwarfing the player and how they feel and are in this situation. And Dead Space 2 just it doesn't focus on the atmosphere, but it does refine the gameplay mechanics of it, which creates a wholly different experience, I feel. As well, both have have obviously very similar everything, enemy designs, weapons, gameplay styles. There's just a general different sense in 2 being far more, where it feels far more focused on action than it feels on, suspense. And I feel that's fine. I think, it's all right for games to move away from one thing into another thing as long as they do it well.
Well, yeah, but then at the same time, if you're moving into an unfamiliar area in efforts to improve, then you kind of have to take that into account. I'm echoing badly.
Yeah. I think I've actually kind of covered most of the key points I wanted to get to in terms of things I think are good design and bad design and examples of. So, either of you got any final thoughts to add?
Well, I did want to bring up a point regarding game design in terms of what you're designing it for. And I admit this applies mostly to Nintendo systems because they tend to be the ones that are a little more, shall we say, out there.
We could say It's perfectly fine.
Yeah. What do you mean? Wait, what?
They are gimmicky. Gimmicky isn't a bad word, but you can't say that Nintendo has designed their systems to always feature a gimmick.
Oh yeah, no, and that's not what I'm saying at all. But it's when game developers are aware of what they're developing for and make the most of it. Biggest example really would be my personal favorite game, The World Ends With You. That one integrates pretty much every element of the DS's technology in a way I haven't really seen any other game do. Like, there is different stuff happening on both screens when it comes to combat. Everything is relevant. You control each one in a separate way. The microphone is used. Touchscreen is very important and allows for use of many different techniques. Even out of combat, even during exploration, the stuff on the top screen can be a lot more important than what's on the bottom, as well as the fact that both screens are kind of integrated into not the story, but how the mechanics of that universe work. It's kind of why I object to there being a port of it on the iPad, because it only has one screen, and I feel that really takes away a sizable bit of why the gameplay is so unique.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, go on.
I was going to say, feel would be when they do design for technology, but it's still not well designed. Like, I remember when the PS3 first launched, it had one major launch title that they hyped up, Lair. Now, Lair was a game that was designed by Factor 5, who made the Rogue Squadron games, which is arguably some of the best Star Wars video games we've ever seen, and probably ever will see. At least flight sims, at the very least.
Take a word for it.
Pedigree to this, it's an aerial combat flight sim game based around dragons and fighting, and it's built to be controlled entirely by the PS3 6-axis controller.
Oh dang.
Knowing now wherein this is a problem, and I mean entirely built, like at first there was no way to control it other than the 6-axis, which means tilting your controller up and down to pitch and turn.
Yeah, I remember.
And it just was, and obviously 6-axis was severely limited because it was a tacked-on gimmick to try and capitalize on the Wii's success. At least that's how I feel about the 6-axis, because I don't know why they bothered with it really, because it was just never going to be anything more than push. I remember playing numerous games where it's just like, oh, and now move the controller up and down to simulate pumping, and it's just like, why? There's no need to this. Just map it to a button. Don't be an idiot. Like, 360 games don't have this stupid problem, and it's basically the same game.
Yeah.
Remember the other times where I did own a 360, I was playing it, I'd look up PS3 gameplay because I was interested to see, graphical disparities. And lo and behold, in order to use this, I would just press, Y repeatedly, flip the controller up and down. And this could be a problem with just the technology at the time, because like I said, the 6-axis was never good. It never did its job well. It was just there.
Yeah.
And I'm glad the PS4 has it, but nowhere near as much, or it's not implementing basically anything.
Yeah, I feel like it was meant to be a level of motion control that was more casual. Like, you didn't have to get up and literally swing the controller around.
I get the impression it was meant to be more fluid. So the idea is you would just swap easily between the styles, and it would promote more, interaction and what's the word? It engrossed the player more, because it's just like immersion. That was it, and you'd be mimicking the actions. It's basically the argument for VR, even though VR I think has other issues around it. But anyway. So I can understand that from the idea, but it just wasn't done well, and no one can really say that 6-axis was a memorable part. I mean, you probably wouldn't remember it until I brought it up right there and then.
No, I remember using it a fair amount of times in Metal Gear Solid 4.
Really have that? I bet. Oh wait, did oh I remember the time. Oh wait, no, never mind. I remember distinctly remember using the 6-axis is in Talking with Rosemary. I remember that they programmed it in so you could jiggle her breasts if you moved the controller up and down, and I was just like, why could you?
Wait, what?
Yeah, in Codec Calls with Rosemary, if you bounce the controller up and down, her breasts jiggle.
Fuck's sake, Kojima.
Fuck off, Kojima. This is just pointless shit. It's like one thing if you can make Snake masturbate in MGS2. It's another thing to just do that for the sake of it. But I could go on for about things I don't like about MGS4, and I could spend even longer talking about how much I dislike the B&B unit.
Yeah, but in terms of what you're asking...
This isn't the Why Train thinks Metal Gear Solid is a stupid series podcast. This is the game design podcast, so... Yeah. I remember using the 6-axis slot in that because it was just a way to reset your camouflage option just very quickly without having to really concern yourself with other buttons. Right, that was how you... wasn't it? Yeah, so just like you're getting along, right, this camo is not helping me right now, and the only way I can get it is by pressing up against somewhere, or I can just quickly shake the controller and keep running. Like that I found super useful, especially on my BBE run. Well, that's super limited. We brought up there because you were expected to just use nothing but 6-axis to control. Oh, yeah, I can't speak on terms of those games. In a game that's about speed and combat, where you kind of need to make movements on the fly, a system like the 6-axis clearly doesn't work, and this negatively impacts the game design because they're building around that you have to use this, flawed mechanic, and that's why they had to hastily patch the game to include, regular controls. Because, I had the more recent example, Star Fox Zero has terrible controls. Oh, that's a shame. Just the worst. Yeah, it is a massive shame. And this isn't getting into all the other issues with the game, like its length. Its laughable length, I should say. Oh. Yeah. If you're interested in Star Fox Zero, wait till somehow it's really cheap. So a couple of years' time, then.
Well,
basically.
If 16 quid's cheap, then you can buy it right now.
Where have you found it for 16 quid?
The Nintendo's official eBay store. They've got a sale on literally that started today.
They have an official eBay?
I found that out today as well.
Fucking hell.
So,
okay.
Assuming that's still available when this goes live. I'm not meaning to advertise for them, but you can go check that out, I guess.
Do mean to advertise. It will get us money.
It would get us money, except for the fact that Nintendo don't support us, which is why there's not. I was about to say there's not a Nintendo thing in the video, and I realise there is, but it's not an official Nintendo thing. So.
Yeah. But
I say this, and I'm saying this as someone who did actually buy Star Fox Zero at full price because I was excited for a new Star Fox game, and woefully, and by Platinum of all people. Wait, Platinum made it? Yeah. Damn it! It should have been good. Platinum were pretty good at this. And it wasn't. It was lazy. The controls were I'm not sure if Platinum was in the development for the whole thing, or if they just took over. I don't want to say it's like Metal Gear Rising thing where a chunk of the game was made by Kojima's team and then they passed it over to competent video game makers and made what is arguably one of the best Metal Gears ever made, if not the best. Yeah. But once again, this isn't the Why Metal Gear Solid is a dumb series podcast. Yeah, maybe next time. I'm not prepared for whenever that one is because you and me are going to have disagreements. I don't think we'll to it just because I feel it would take forever. Yeah, I feel like it'd be me saying one thing, you saying another, and Yuki in the middle, just like, Mom, Dad, please stop fighting.
Well, here's the thing: when you guys do that, which feel free to do that, I'm not going to be a part.
Yeah.
There's no rule that says I have to be in these podcasts. You guys want to do that podcast? Go ahead, and please just, I'm not. I was super disappointed in Reese because I thought he'd have some I thought he'd have some insights, not necessarily good insights because it's Reese and he's has and he has. Well, I'm sorry. Come on, No Man's Sky.
No,
even he thinks he's wrong. Even he admits, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. And it really says a lot when someone else admits that they have a wrong opinion. Yeah, but he at least defended his point using very, very cogent arguments. Did he have fun playing it? Yes.
And then undefended his point the second we got to doing the top 10. Said, look, I'll just...
Yeah. Reese was had a whole lot of interesting choices for his last thing, and I made light of all of those choices. And I'm not going to say that, he shouldn't have picked what he did. I'm just saying is that when he himself can't defend most of his choices, therein you kind of wonder.
It's just a funny concept, really.
But I still think he would have had good insights, but he's a butt, so what can you do?
Well, people can say the same regarding you, right?
But I do. But I did take part. I'm not going to pretend that I'm always right, but I always make my points. And I
You're
always
not going
make
to pretend you're always right. You're just going to think that you're always right. Pretending would imply that you didn't believe it.
Yeah, basically. Nothing if not self-evident.
Well, that's a good thing, I suppose.
Mm.
So, yeah, video game design. That was what that was about.
You got anything you want to point out? Any games that you think have like great design for whatever reason, Yuki? Because I realise you've been silenced. I kind of apologise for that.
Oh, it's alright. You don't have to be silent. I mean, I did say going into this, I had nothing planned. I was just like, yeah, I'm here for the ride. I mean, the only game from a design point that I would like to talk about, I guess, is Dragon Quest Builders, because I've been playing so much of it. And it's hard to talk about from a design concept without thinking of Minecraft, because it's basically a rip-off of Minecraft. But I feel it just does Minecraft 10 million times better than Minecraft does. Something that you said, I think it was yesterday or the day before when we were playing Overwatch, about how you can't think of a game in its modding capabilities, which I feel is what most people look at Minecraft like. You know? Does that make sense?
I don't.
Well, okay. Most. You're not most, Sam. You're not most people.
No, I know.
My argument
Ask.
it's like Fallout and Skyrim and such, in that I don't like the idea of judging a game by its mods, because yes, those mods might be cool. They might change the way the game is, but influence it. But it doesn't change the fact that the core game itself should be inherently fun or good. And I don't think Minecraft's fun at all. You can add as many mods as you want. You can include all the giant mech mods and all the Iron Man suit mods and everything else. But it doesn't change the fact that I think if I can't enjoy the core game, why the hell would I even bother with it?
Yeah, I understand that from a core concept. And while I would say at one point in time I did enjoy Minecraft, there's definitely something about just not being told what to do and just doing whatever you want, setting your own goals. I like the concept, but eventually there is a limit of what you can actually do in a game like that. So then taking the core concept of Minecraft, splitting it into different like sections or islands in this case, and saying, here's what you're meant to do. You can still do whatever you want. It is still the ability to do that, but you actually have a goal. There is an end goal in sight. There are different ways you can get to this goal. There are different secret missions and all that kind of stuff to explore, like any other video game would do. Basically bringing Minecraft to the level of polish that other video games have. And I think that's what I quite like about it.
I mean, how with Minecraft was when my friend got a server, and it's just me and a few other mates, and we just played on it, and we might have done our own thing, but there was always the capacity to go over and mess with them and have fun and play pranks. It's just, it was fun as a party game, but it also lost its appeal very quickly.
Yeah, I can agree with that much. I think we all literally did the same. Declan got a server, and we all did where
it kind of comes
or something.
I'm not really playing the game for the sake of playing the game, but I'm playing it for the sake of having fun with friends. And
yeah, well, there's a lot of games. That's the same with that one Wii U game that we played. I can't even remember what, Lost Reavers. The game wasn't good. We literally just got it because man, all four of us could play that together. That's something we could do. Doesn't mean that I would never defend the fucking anything in that game. I mean, you literally, the best thing to do in that game is to not let you attack, so then they don't attack you back. That's stupid. But as a concept where it's just, hey, here's a game, 4 people can play it online and it's fun. Okay.
And free.
Oh, and free, yes. Free. That's very important. Very important. That game would be garbage if it wasn't free.
Lost Reavers has no single player. You have to play it basically with 4 friends. Minecraft does essentially have single player, and it was built with single player as the basic thing for a lot of its development cycle.
Yeah, that's understandable. I feel like we're maybe not the correct target for Minecraft, because most people who still enjoy it to this day are like really young kids, and I feel like it's a good thing for them because it helps creativity flow, and most kids these days are not creative, so I'm all for that.
That's what it became, but it's not what it started out as. It was started out for PC. It wasn't intended as a game for children, I should point out.
But yeah, no, but
it wasn't. They went, the game I will design that will teach kids creativity, and maybe that's a good thing that that's what it evolved into, and it found a niche so it could survive longer than it honestly should have.
Survive being the understatement, because it done way more than survive. Flourished.
Yeah.
But I think the issue probably would be dying right about now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, like, it helps that a lot of what made Minecraft so popular was the YouTubers it generated.
Oh,
There was a
yeah,
time
true.
where just a lot of people became famous just because they did Minecraft vids.
Yeah, that is very true.
And then a lot of them graduated because they realized that Minecraft is a limited resource in many respects, and there's only so much you can mine out of it before, pun intended, before it's just it's too much, and move on to other games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I can think of channels that were I used to watch that were exclusively Minecraft vids because I liked Minecraft was a thing that I liked to watch, not to play.
Yeah, I used to watch a few Minecraft YouTubers.
Once again, it kind of ties somewhat into Reese's argument about Pokemon Go, which I still don't agree with at all. But it's a lot more social in that regard, and it's more fun. Like, there's games that are just more fun to watch than they are to play.
There definitely are, yeah.
Mm.
Kind of creates this, it kind of creates a narrative to Minecraft in that regard. Because people love a narrative, a story. So if it becomes like watching someone trying to succeed in something, then that is in of itself a narrative that's slightly more entertaining than you having to do the narrative, because it's not just like, say you're doing a playthrough of Minecraft where you want to build a giant statue, but it's somewhat more entertaining to watch someone else do the statue, because then you don't have to do all the grindy parts, all the stuff that's just really not fun, which people admit they do while doing something else, or while listening to podcasts, basically distracting themselves so they don't have to focus on the huge grind they have to do for resources.
Which,
I was going to say the cold inevitability of death.
I was going to say, if you have a huge grinding thing you need to do in a game, you should be listening to this podcast. Although saying that at the end of it really doesn't help.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is why you should have listened to us for an hour.
Maybe when we record more podcasts about more unique and varied things and we actually get a bit of professionalism in these.
Okay, maybe cut the last bit out, but we'll definitely do more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if no one else has anything else to say after this, what was meant to be a clear, concise topic became, as always, a series of nonsensical ramblings and non sequiturs.
Well,
I've got to say,
that's part of our charm.
I guess that's why people like us and why we continually talk to each other, because it works.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually think this was the most on-topic conversation as a group of friends we have ever managed to have in our entire lives.
Probably, yeah.
Like this, there were so few times that we actually weaved off onto a different topic. Even then, it was still kind of related back. I've never seen us do that before. So
every time we started going off topic, we recognised it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Said I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to discuss, because I do think it's a very important topic that a lot of people take for granted.
I could agree with you that it's very important, but I also came into this with literally nothing to discuss. I was just kind of here along for the ride,
That's fair.
I guess you provide an interesting thing from the outside perspective. Have you gained anything or any insight into just anything from our discussion?
I mean, no, not really. It was kind of all stuff that I knew. I actually like game design, and when I was younger, I was looking to become a game designer, so I knew all this stuff anyway. I don't know. I'm one of those people that knows it when I think about it, but then I don't really think about it, and I just kind of go with it,
Yeah, it's a hard thing to say, I know these details. How do you know all these?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. That's a good explanation of how my brain works. It'll think of it sometimes, and sometimes it's just like, nah.
Yeah, it's even harder when you're writing university essays and dissertations, and they keep saying, quote your sources, and I'm like, but my source is my brain. I just know this stuff.
Quote your brain, then. Just quote your brain.
But that's what the essay is.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for sitting through this podcast. If you did, if you didn't, well, I don't blame you.
If you didn't, then how are you listening to us and not thanking you for it?
I probably would have clicked off like 10 minutes into it and gone, well, I'll get back to that. Never. I used to be an avid podcast listener, and then, well, I think I was just like, man, rather than listening to podcasts, why don't I just, do other stuff while I actually be productive while I'm being unproductive. So I would listen to podcasts while I would play games, and then I was just like, well, you know what? I can actually work on my various projects while I play games because it takes more or less. Because I've reached a point in some games where it takes more concentration to listen to the podcast than it does to play the game. Not to toot my own horn or anything. Design. You could argue, but then I feel that's also bad player interaction because there's games where I have obsessively played and replayed. Beautiful Joe is one of my all-time favorite games, and I always said if I ever do like a Let's Play channel and get recording software, I would just play Beautiful Joe as my first playthrough to lull everyone into false sense of security that I'm actually really good at games.
You know, it's really funny you say that because that's exactly what I did. I did Banjo-Kazooie as my first one because I literally know that game like the back of my hand and everything about it. People probably, if they saw that, they'd be like, oh, this guy actually knows how to play video games. And then anyone who's watched the streams with me and Sam can tell you, no, this guy does not know how to play video games.
Yeah, I think I know how to play games better than you, but that's not saying much.
I think most people do. I play them a lot. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm like that gold rank player in Overwatch who just is like absolutely terrible, you know? That's like me at all games.
Like literally only you and I get because we're the only ones who are there.
You know what I mean? I mean in all video games. I play them a lot, so I know the concept, but it doesn't mean I'm actually good at it. Whatever.
Nah.
Seen me try and fail at Bloodborne, although at least it was on one of the hardest bosses in the game, so...
At least you beat the game. I haven't even got past the first area.
I approach problems in Bloodborne like I approach all of life's problems. I figure eventually, if I slam myself into this just enough, it will give out.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, like I do all life problems, stab it with a weapon, a really sharp one, until it dies.
Just like, approach most of my problems with a sword in hand.
Nah. Because you have to. I think in some games you have to accept that it's like classic video games, especially stuff like Mega Man. Basically, you have to work on the assumption that you're going to have to throw at least some of your lives away just to work out patterns because the game's kind of cheap like that. And that's poor game design.
Yeah, the word you're looking for is trial and error. And I was going to say, I really dislike trial and error gameplay. That's the worst. There should always be a way you can work out how to do it without it just killing you. But that's just my opinion.
To Dark Souls, and the reason I said fuck the Capra Demon can go fuck itself is because the Capra Demon boss is what I think is the most bullshit boss, just because of one element to it, in that it comes out of nowhere and it's ridiculously quick and it can basically one hit kill you.
Yeah.
And it's in a room where your one advantage you have, dodge rolling, is severely limited. And if you don't dodge roll in the right direction at the right angle, you're going to still get hit by the Capra Demon. And I fucking hate that boss because it's so counterproductive to the rest of the game being a fair challenge in that regard. You know, and the Capra Demon's just like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Oh, you avoided my first thing. Oh, well, I guess now I'm kind of boned. And bosses are fine. Oh yeah, they're tough and challenging and require like you to once again throw yourself into it a whole mess of times until eventually you get that, you know, that one run through where you did all the dodges at the right time and you got all the right critical stabs and everything just went well. Capra Demon though, just I hated it. I didn't even like have fantastic trouble with it. I just really hated it from a game design perspective.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Like the difference between bosses there, you've basically highlighted why like the secret bosses in Kingdom Hearts 2 are great compared to pretty much all the secret bosses on the portable Kingdom Hearts games. It's pretty much, they are very much the same thing, except the portable ones cause much more damage in single go, so you're going to die a lot more without learning anything.
Stuff like Vanitas, for instance, or Vanitas,
Vanitas Remnant, yeah.
And his like, oh, but if you heal, I heal. And it's like, it feels so...
That one's a bit easier to understand because you just have to switch to using potions.
It's still just kind of... It's clearly designed to catch you out because up to this point you've been so used to being able to heal. I remember the hilarity once you unlock the Leaf Bracer skill and it's like, ha, 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 ha. Fuck you, you can't touch this, I'm healing.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the difference is the first Kingdom Hearts secret bosses are all like massive variations in how you play, you know, from the very specific way, and it's kind of a boss that you have to fight in its own. You have to fight the boss a certain way, but it's still fun trying to figure out the patterns.
Oh yeah,
like the boss Nagbar, who I can't Kurt something.
Kurt Ziza.
Yeah, who you have very specific ways you can fight him, and only those ways you can fight him. And well, he's a tough boss. At least there's change up from the usual boss fights in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah. Honestly, it's gotten to the point where I've played battles like that so much, I am better at fighting bosses in Kingdom Hearts than I am at actually playing the game.
I always thought was a fun one.
Sorry?
Phantom, Grim Reaper in Neverland.
Oh no, fuck the Phantom. The Phantom was horrible. Because I spent so much of Kingdom Hearts 1 blocking, and that is the one fight where, because you're flying, you can't block.
Yeah. Because when I first played Kingdom Hearts 1, I was literally chose the worst combination of options at the start of the game, so I didn't get blocking till ages in. I think I got blocking just before the Riku fight, the final Riku fight, if you will.
Yeah. That's another thing. That's kind of how Kingdom Hearts 2 improved it. Essential skills like that weren't left until late in your leveling tree, no matter what you pick. You're going to get guard very quickly. You're going to be able to get scans so you can see your enemy's HP very quickly. It doesn't make sense not to.
Well, that's just an example of a sequel of good sequels, then improving on the core concepts of the first and fixing the issues that we players had. I mean, granted, they created whole new issues that's covered before.
Oh yeah. Kingdom Hearts 2 created a whole bunch of new issues, but there are elements of gameplay that really you force yourself to discover by playing on higher difficulties. And considering I pretty much exclusively play Kingdom Hearts on proud mode these days, you just got to use them.
Just the general sense of I've already beaten the game on proud before, so to go back to anything below it would be kind of pointless. It wouldn't be a challenge because I've already shown that if I can beat it once, I can.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm finding going into even the new games on proud mode, I'm enjoying that a lot more.
In any case, we already tried to end this once and failed, so this time we're going to definitely end it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
That we will.
Goodbye.